The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, welcome everybody to the Yaron Brook Show. It's, what is it? I don't even know. Thursday night. Weird week. Hope you're all doing well, having a great week, and looking forward to tomorrow, Friday. Friday's a good day, and to the weekend. Still no electricity in Puerto Rico, at least not in my building. Everything we've got running here, all of this is due to the fact that there is a generator at the bottom of the building. It's been running now, I think, for 3 days straight because the earthquake did enough damage to knock out electricity to much of the island. I think still 50%, including my building and my neighborhood, 50% of the island still have no electricity. I mean, the corruption, the unbelievably bad state of infrastructure in Puerto Rico is quite amazing. They promised after the hurricane that they would privatize the electric utility. Well, good luck with that. It would be nice, right? And create some competition. I'm eager to get Bill Gates to maybe build one of his nuclear power plants here on the island, and maybe have a few of those micro nuclear power plants spread around the island to provide us with electricity. Because right now, there's no electricity, so it's plenty of government spending in Puerto Rico, but the infrastructure sucks. I mean, the two main areas in which infrastructure sucks, where the government controls everything, are electricity and the roads. I've never seen potholes as big as they are in Puerto Rico. Never seen potholes. Your car could literally fall in one of them and you would disappear and never be heard from again. This is why you have to drive an SUV in Puerto Rico, because the only way to survive the potholes. All right. Anyway, due to incredible modern technology and the fact that people in our building pay enough money on a monthly basis to have a fantastic generator, we can do the show in spite of that. This is the second show since I've had no electricity. The first one was 2 days ago. All right, a few topics today. I mean, but I'm certainly open to super chat questions, so feel free to ask away, at least to the extent that I have answers to the questions that you want to ask. I had to do a show. I had to start the show off by saying, "Told you so." I guess we don't have a World War III. I guess we're not going to war with Iran. I never thought we would. I never thought this would turn into anything big. I told you they would probably miss their targets, although you could argue that they wanted to miss the targets, but I told you Trump would back off, and Trump has backed off. I guess I'm playing the same 4D chess game that Trump is. I'm starting to be able to predict his next moves. Nothing happening, and I expect we return to the status quo. The diplomatic channels have already opened up. The Trump administration is already in negotiations with the Iranians to have another nuclear deal. I think the Iranians are ready to negotiate, and I expect a meeting. I expect a lot of high-profile stuff. I don't know that we'll get a deal before the election, but certainly movement towards a deal before the election. I think the Iranians don't really have any incentive to get a deal done before the election, unless they could get one done really quickly. Remember, their economy is really hurting. And this is, and of course, you also saw the Iranians, it looks like, shot down the Ukrainian airliner. This is not a Canadian airliner, it was a Ukrainian airliner. And it looks like the Iranians shot it down by accident. Look, the point I was trying to make last time, and it was hard, is the Iranians are incompetent. They run an incompetent military that has no real substantial capabilities. Yes, they've got a lot of these ballistic missiles but it's dubious the extent to which consistently they could hit their targets. These missiles could be knocked out of the sky if we had placed a missile defense system in Iraq to defend our troops, which we haven't. We do have such missile defense systems, I think, in Qatar and guarding some of our other bases in the Middle East. So there is nothing to fear from the Iranian military other than their capacity to just wreak havoc in the world out there. People said, the Middle East is going to be destabilized by killing of Soleimani. I mean, this is the Middle East we're talking about, not exactly a bastion of stability. Who cares if it gets a little bit more destabilized given how unstable it is and how anti-American it is? I guess my point is almost everything you hear about the Middle East in the media, left and right, generals, former SEALs, former CIA agents, I don't care, is for the most part wrong. The United States, the media in particular, almost always overestimates America's foes. They almost always overestimate the power of Middle East countries. They almost always overestimate the technology that other countries have. There's a reason Iran didn't do that much. It's because they're petrified of the United States taking them out. The economy is, as I said, in shambles. Their GDP shrunk by 10% last year. They have nothing. They produce nothing. They make nothing. The last thing in the world we should be afraid of is a war with Iran. Now, what I find is the whole stance of the administration. I mean, the Democrats are even more pathetic, but the whole stance of the administration is truly pathetic. I mean, we don't want regime change. That was repeated again. We want to negotiate. That was repeated again. So what's the point of taking this guy out? I mean, okay, so retribution, fine. I'm all for retribution. It's not harmful. What's the point of taking him out? If you don't want regime change, what's the point of taking him out? If you're not willing to confront the regime, what's the point of taking him out if nothing's going to change? You replace one bastard by another bastard. The next guy is going to come in and do the same thing that Soleimani did. So there is nothing here. The whole mess that was created by Trump was useless and pathetic. You know, it's interesting because Trump has kind of the right, let's call them instincts, right? So I saw this press conference where he said, I don't understand why they make such a big deal about cultural institutions. They can kill our soldiers and we can't destroy their cultural institutions. I mean, he said, oh, but it's the law, so I'll follow the law because I care about the law, as if he cares about the law. So he has the right instincts. It's right. You can kill people, but don't bomb that building because it's got historical status. Really? That's pathetic. But he says it and presents it and doesn't follow up on it in such a way that it's meaningless that he says it. It's meaningless. Yeah, the rules of war, the modern rules of war presented in the world are ridiculous, absurd, are stupid. Okay, but what are you going to do about it? Oh, I'm going to negotiate with an enemy that's been our enemy for 40 years. And he said it's been our enemy for 40 years. He says all this stuff. He knows. Maybe because he's being fed by Pompeo and stuff. It turns out Pompeo is the one who really wanted this guy dead and has really lobbied Trump to get this guy dead. But again, no strategy. These things are meaningless with no strategy. It's not the U.S. law, Jennifer. It's the international, quote, law. It's the law of war, so-called. This is what I wrote about in Just War Theory. You can read that in the book, Winning the Unwinnable War. So it's all just it's all just a waste because nothing was done. Nothing is being done. Again, no strategy, no idea of where we're heading, no idea of what to do. Again, the strategy is negotiate. Negotiate with evil. You try to struck a deal with evil because Donald Trump, could do a better job than Obama did in negotiating a deal. Is that really the issue? All right, then let's see. Few other things around this. One is, just again, the ridiculousness of the left. The shooting of Suleiman and anything else, it was an act of war. Again, Iran has been at war with the United States since 1979. They haven't stopped. We need to recognize we're at war. And yes, and then there's the issue of, should you get permission from Congress? Absolutely you should get permission from Congress. What the Trump administration should have done is they should have gone to Congress 2 years ago and said, we're at war with Iran. They're at war with us. They started it. They've been going after us forever. You should authorize the President of the United States to engage in the necessary self-defense actions in order to eradicate and eliminate the threat posed by the Iranian regime. And they should have voted on it. Instead, now Trump administration is claiming they don't need to notify Congress. They don't need to ask permission from Congress, even if, no matter who they kill in Iran, no matter what they do, because Congress and the presidents have basically completely defaulted on the separation of powers, completely defaulted on this issue of it's Congress's job to declare war, not the president's. So as a consequence, Mike Lee today, a Republican, who was briefed by the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State, said it was a travesty. He said it was the worst debriefing he's had in all his years as senator. He said it was pathetic. They wouldn't answer the questions. They wouldn't commit to anything. They basically completely, utterly ignored the Constitution. And this is Mike Lee. This is not a Democrat. And I think he's absolutely right. But of course, Congress doesn't care either. Nobody at this point cares about the Constitution of the United States. And this conflict with Iran has just brought that to the forefront. Congress is pathetic, but the president doesn't even try. Make the case to the American people. Has anybody tried to face the American people, make the case that Iran's been at war with us for 40 years, and it's time we took it seriously? No. Instead, they kill this person, then they kill one general, then nothing happens. He's replaced. Nothing will change in the Middle East. Their influence in Iraq is not going to change. Their influence in Syria is not going to change. The only thing that will change their influence in Syria is the Russians. The Russians don't want them there. Okay. Iran is incompetent. And the shooting down of the Ukrainian airplane is a good example of that. Now, what should be done about that? Nothing, in the context of we're not doing anything about anything. Iranians kill Americans all the time. We do nothing. Iranians arm all our enemies. We do nothing. Iranians advocate for terrorism all over the world. We do nothing. Iranians fund terrorism all over the world. We do nothing. They build mosques all over the world that preach the most vile form of Islamism and hatred of America. We do nothing. So they shoot down an airplane. Not even ours. Well, of course we're going to do nothing. Who's going to do something? The Ukrainians? They've got their hands full with the Russians. And the Russians sure aren't going to do anything. The only people doing anything to try to protect themselves are the Israelis, where every time the Iranians get a little close to Israel, the Israelis go out there and bomb them and kill them. But even Israel doesn't do very much. Should be doing a lot more, should be a lot more aggressive. But to a large extent, they're not that aggressive because the United States won't support them. So the United States has not had a foreign policy in 70 years. It does not have a foreign policy today. It certainly does not have a foreign policy with regard to the Middle East. It has no idea what we're doing over there. It's Trump is as bad as they come, but it's not like Bush, Obama had a proper foreign policy. It's not like Pompeo knows what he's doing. Somebody asked what I think of Pompeo. He's a very mixed bag. I think he's generally been good on Iran, and I think, again, he would, if he were president, I think he would be better than Trump on Iran. But I think, is going along with Trump's awful behavior in North Korea. He's going along with sucking up to the Saudis. So Pompeo's turned out to be a lot weaker. Plus, he's one of the people who wants to try to get Snowden and to execute him for treason. So I'm very mixed on Pompeo, just like I'm mixed on a lot of these guys. But he has a more realistic view of Iran than do most other people in the administration, including Trump. But I don't like him. But but that's not a standard. I don't like anybody. They all get it wrong. I mean, it's just another example. It's just another example among almost every issue we cover here where the answers are not that hard. But people are not interested in answers, and they're not interested in dealing with problems. They'd much rather evade. They'd much rather pretend. They'd much rather look the other way. They'd much rather appear as some kind of peacemaker. Let's see. Yaron, I agree with you on an aggressive deterrent-based foreign policy, but could you steelman the argument for the Obama-era approach? Thank you. There is no excuse for the Obama approach. Obama's approach was, we don't lead. There's nothing special about us. We intervene in other countries, but only if other countries will intervene with us, or only if we take a back seat to the French and the British and the other Europeans, which is what we did in Libya. We never pursue our own self-interest. And we see moral equivalency all around the world. I mean, one of Obama's worst speeches, one of his most awful speeches, was one of his first speeches, a speech I think he gave in Cairo, where he basically made complete moral equivalence between the Arabs and the Israelis, between the Muslim Brotherhood who he invited in the audience, and between the secular regimes. I mean, complete moral equivocation. So there's nothing to give a best explanation of Obama. Obama was just a complete I said at the time, Obama was the first anti-American president. Anti-American president in every dimension. He didn't believe America was special, and he didn't want to protect America, particularly above anything else. Obama was the first anti-American president. Now, there have been many anti-American presidents by the standard of Americanism, but by the standard of just America, the country, and what it stands for. Obama was the first explicitly anti-American. And some of you think I'm tough on Trump. I mean, I'm tough on Trump, partially because he's a Republican, but I'm hugely tough on Obama, and was throughout his administration. All right, how does the commander-in-chief act on time-sensitive information that needs action if he has to get the green light from Congress? Well, if it's time-sensitive information, then he can act. But then, if he expands that action beyond that, he has to get Congress's approval. But this is the thing about the Middle East. We have thousands of troops there. Indeed, we have thousands of troops all over the world. None of those troops have been authorized by Congress, with the exception of some in Iraq and in Iraq to fight ISIS. What you need is an authorization that during this war, call it Bush's name, the war on terror. I hate that name. you grant the commander-in-chief certain powers to deal with certain countries and certain institutions and certain people in a particular way. Or that's why you have to go to Congress and say, we're generally at war with Iraq, I need permission to deal with it. Not any specifics, not I need to kill this general, I need permission to deal with it. And that gives you an open agenda to deal with it in the way appropriate. You have to get some permission for Congress for these troops to be in all these countries and to act, but to act in a way that defends America. So you have to be able to present to Congress the case that they are necessary. They are necessary out there in the world to defend America. The problem is what we use is imminent threat as an excuse. We place the troops there because there's imminent threat. Then there's no imminent threat, but they're already there. So by being there, they've created an imminent threat. And it just continues forever and expands all over the world. So we have troops in 120 different countries, and the imminent threats, every single country where U.S. troops, there's an imminent threat, by almost by definition. And you can't, that's not a constitutional government if you do that. There's no separation of powers if you do that. You've got to have some sanction by Congress. Now, the real sanction would be to bring back most of the troops, to bring them back home. And then only to engage in those situations where there truly is an imminent threat and you have to act, and then get permission from Congress to deal with the situation. But that means to go to war. And the problem is that we don't want to go to war. We don't believe in going to war. We believe in police actions. We believe in just temporary things and wars against terrorism, as if there is. You need to go to war against certain regimes and replace them. And you need to go to war against certain organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hamas and Hezbollah. But you can't phrase it narrowly. What the U.S. Congress should do is a declaration of war against Islamism, against jihadism, against Islamic totalitarianism. And then anybody who's in that net get captured, and that's easy. Then you take care of it. Then you don't have to have a war against Saudi Arabia, and a war against Iran, and a war against ISIS, and a war against Hamas, and a war against Islamic Jihad, and a war against, Al-Qaeda. You just have one war against all those groups and countries that promote and support and endorse Islamic totalitarianism. And then you go to win, and you're over, and it's over very quickly. I said after 9/11, this does not have to take years, months, and it's over. And the fact that it's 20 years is an indication of the utter, complete failure of the military, of the American foreign policy strategy and the American military for not being able to eradicate the threat that we face. Not even trying. Something they didn't eradicate. They're not even trying. All right. You said before that the authoritarians have no right to rule. How do you determine the line of too much authoritarianism, and when is violence justified? All right, so you have to separate here between violence inside and outside, right? So violence outside in another country is only justified if that country poses a threat to America in this case. It poses a threat to you. So the government can only act in self-defense. That's the only time it should be able to use force. So I'm trying to think. I don't know. Burma has been a dictatorship forever, right? Oppressing its citizens, doing harm to them. Wasn't threatening the United States. We should do nothing about them. Nothing. I mean, as an individual, you shouldn't trade with them, but they're not a threat to the United States. The United States should have no foreign policy with regard to Burma. Should basically say, we have no diplomatic, we should have no diplomatic relationships with them, but we should have nothing with them. But let's say in Iran, it's totalitarian and it's a threat to the United States. Then you have to deal with them militarily. Now, internally, in terms of tax on tea and things like that, revolution, Ayn Rand gave 3 criteria: freedom of speech, curtailment of your ability to speak, election of leaders, basically one-party rule. And right now, the third one slips on my mind. But basically, those would be the criteria where you would say, they're taking away my speech, and I can't choose my leaders. That is the point at which you are justified in rising up in revolution. Right? So that's internally. Now, the beauty of the Declaration of Independence, or one of the many beauties of the Declaration of Independence, is that they list all the things that caused them to revolt, all the things, all the rights that were infringed by their rulers. And you would have to be able to do the same thing if you started a revolution, and they would have to be substantial. They would have to be, and I think to a large extent, our rulers have way violated our rights more than England did of the colonists, and we are more than justified in revolting against our government. I don't recommend it because I don't think you'd get very far, and I don't see who we are. There's not enough of us. But we're certainly justified in doing it. Is there any group of organized atheist terrorists? There was. I don't think that, I'm trying to think if there is right now. I don't know of any right now, but there was. The Tamil Tigers, I think, many of them were atheists. This was in Sri Lanka. So many of the Tamil Tigers were atheists, but most terrorist organizations are tied to some religion or to a national cause. So, for example, Baader-Meinhof, you might not remember Baader-Meinhof. Baader-Meinhof was a organized terrorist organization in Germany in the 70s. Do you know there was more terrorism in Europe in the 70s than there is today, in spite of all the Muslims there? No, the Tamil Tigers were not Muslim. There are Muslims that are associated with the Tamil Tigers, but the Tamil Tigers are not all Muslims. We can look it up quickly. But Baader-Meinhof was a communist terrorist organization. And indeed, over the decades, there have been many leftist terrorist organizations. The PLO is not in and of itself a religious organization. It was secular. I don't think Yasser Arafat believed in God. The 1972 Olympics terrorism was PLO. They were nationalist leftists. The Tamil Tigers were not Muslims. There have been suicide bombings that have been instigated. The Tamil Tigers were the first ones, supposedly, to do real large suicide bombers, and they were atheists. Now, the latest bombing in Sri Lanka were done by Muslims, but that's not the Tamil Tigers. It's a different group. It's a different group. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so they've definitely been organized atheist terrorists. Most of the communists, the anarchists of the 19th century, Oklahoma City bombing, I don't know if he was an atheist. I have no idea. I think he was probably a Christian. The Unabomber was definitely an atheist. That's right. Okay, let's do quickly. We've got three. Ricky Gervais, we're going to wait. I just watched This Land Is Mine. That's a movie I recommended. Spectacular movie, great recommendation. A feeling of hope only a few films can capture. Much more than hope. Feeling of value, a feeling of heroism. It's one of the best movies ever made, in my view. It's a spectacular example of great acting, great movie making, and a great testament to heroism. And heroism, not of the physical kind, heroism of the spirit, heroism of a man confronting his fears, standing up to them, and turning from a coward at the beginning of the movie, a complete and utter coward, to a real hero by the end of the movie, an inspirational hero. So truly an inspiration. Are there any well-known people who don't identify as objectivists who represent objectivism acceptably? No. I mean, there's nobody. I don't think you can represent objectivism acceptably if you don't self-identify as an objectivist. I don't know how you do that. I mean, what does it mean, I guess, to represent objectivism acceptably? And yet, say if they were, then I wouldn't out them as objectivists if they don't want to out themselves as objectivists. All right. I think I've said everything I've got to say about Iran. I mean, yep. I mean, the Iranians, by the way, are still threatening future revenge and all this stuff, but they have to make a lot of noise. And they will. They'll continue killing Americans. I mean, there'll be no question about this. They will continue to kill Americans. They'll do it by proxy. They'll do it wherever they can, and they'll do it in hiding. They won't launch missiles from their territory. They won't give the Americans an excuse to attack. But we, as the cowards and the evaders that we are, will pretend that it's not really Iran killing Americans and that Iran's a peaceful country that just wants to negotiate. But that's just us being evasive. They will continue their war with us with no stop. That is, and Trump has proved to be as pathetic, even on this issue, as I suspected. All right. What next? Ricky Gervais. Gervais, is that how you say it? Gervais? I don't know. I'm bad at pronouncing names. I don't know if you saw this, but this was at the Foreign Correspondents' Dinner where they hand out prizes to actors and actresses and everything. And this is the 5th time he has stood up on stage and been the MC of the event. He has made it a habit as being MC to insult the audience, to insult Hollywood, to insult the actors, to insult the institution. And there's a sense in which, yay, this is great. They deserve it. This is the Golden Globes, right? They deserve it. And there's a sense in which, why? So I'll talk about both, right? So let's start with the why. Things like the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes, the Emmys, the different celebrations. The celebrations, Ricky Gervais is a leftist. How can he be an objectivist? I mean, he's a complete and utter leftist. He's a supporter of Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn in England. He himself said after the fact, he said, I agree with all these people. I was just making fun of them. But he agrees with them. Here's the thing. All these award ceremonies are really cool. They are celebrations of achievement. They're celebrations that are beautiful. They're celebrations of, of people doing amazing things. Oh, sorry I didn't get the joke about the Ricky being an objectivist. Too literal, I guess. I've been trolled too much, maybe. Ayn Rand commented in 1970s when a streaker, somebody naked, ran across the stage of the Oscars as a way to as a leftist trying to shame the Oscars or whatever, had some political agenda associated with it. And her approach was, that is disgusting. That's so nihilistic. This is a place where people, the beautiful people, dress up beautifully, they're talented, they're able, whatever you think of their politics. They make movies. They're entertained. They're this is a wonderful thing. They're out to celebrate achievement. Now, it's sad that the movies they celebrate are such crap, but the idea of these award ceremonies, and then to hire somebody during the awards to make fun of them, of themselves, it's just undercutting. It's nihilistic. It's cheap. Now, it's true that, but the Oscars have become, and all these institutions have become politicized, but they were in the 70s. Remember, what's his name? I forget his name now. Anyway, actors wouldn't come to accept their awards. So was there one actor who sent an American Indian to accept their award as protest for the way America treated the Native Americans. And these have always been platforms for people making stupid political statements and speeches. It was Marlon Brando, that's right. But the fact is that this is a celebration of achievement, and the kind of humor that Gervais applied is just inappropriate for that setting. It cheapens the setting. It cheapens its meaning. Now, it's also true that the political speeches they all make cheapen the setting, cheapen the event. I agree. But that doesn't make you mean you should double up on it. So, while what he said was pretty funny, and while what he said was, for the most part, true, though he also went after Apple and, sweatshops and all of that, because he's a real lefty, it was so, everybody in the audience was embarrassed. They were squirming in their seats, whether they deserved it or they didn't. He made, I think, cheap jokes about Epstein, right? He's their friend. If he is their friend, that's horrible, and it's not something to laugh at. It's something that you wouldn't go in a room with friends of Jeffrey Epstein. He made a joke about, they all flew in their own jet, because I guess Jeffrey didn't send his jet to pick them up, right? So there's a whole joke about Epstein's jets. I think it cheapens the event. It makes it nihilistic and narcissistic. And now, I don't watch these events anymore because of the politics, but that's the appropriate response. The appropriate response is for the audience not to watch them, because these people make these speeches and they take themselves seriously, and they shouldn't be taking themselves seriously. Now, somebody asked, should Gervais compromise his comedy? No, he shouldn't be asked to do the show. It's his style. It's a stylist insult. Now, I've never liked him. I didn't like The Office. I thought I hate that kind of humor. I hate the kind of humor that just undercuts everything, and particularly the British and the American, both versions of The Office I hated, and he became famous through the version of The Office, the British one. I think there's much better British humor. His style is nihilistic, and he shouldn't be invited to host these shows. These shows should be glamorous. The humor should be appropriate for the occasion of glamour. I like dark humor when it's appropriate. Like Monty Python has some pretty dark humor, and it can be hysterical, but it needs to be in the right context. So, again, I'm not that crazy. I'm not, while what he said was true, you guys take yourself so seriously. Nobody really cares about what you think about politics. Who do you think you are? You have no education. You know nothing. All of that is true. The American people shouldn't care one iota, one way or the other, what the political views are of people in Hollywood. Nobody should pay them attention. They're nobodies on steroids. They're actors. That's great. I have no interest in what actors think about politics, one way or the other. I have no interest in what almost anybody thinks about politics because they're what they are. Now, if there's an actor who's particularly intelligent, who has something intelligent to say, then yes, they're interesting, not because they're an actor, but because they're intelligent. But most of these actors are not particularly intelligent when it comes to beyond the scope of what they do, which is to act, and some of them are brilliant actors. Robert De Niro is an excellent actor. I'm not interested in what he thinks about politics. Even if he had good politics, I'm not interested. Clint Eastwood is a good actor, not a great actor. And I'm not interested in what he has to say about politics, qua actor. We place way too much as a culture, and it's a cultural sickness. We place way too much importance on what celebrities think about anything. Who cares what Madonna thinks? I mean, she sings, you like her music, great, but who cares about what she thinks about politics? Or even worse, the Kardashians. Who cares about the Kardashians, period? I mean, what's the talent of the Kardashians? That they were born with good genes and they look good? There's nothing beyond. There's nothing there. One of the things that shows the extent to which our culture is sick. And I need to do a show. One of the next few shows is I still need to do a show on suicide and the drug epidemic and all this stuff. Because our culture is sick. And one of the expressions of that is the obsession with celebrity. The obsession with celebrity. You want to ask a question? There is a super chat, particularly those of you who don't support the show. Use super chat. That's the way I'll answer your question. So I think modern culture is sad and pathetic. Sad and pathetic. Again, it's reflected in the fact that we care so much about what these people think. Any of these people. Instead of just enjoying what good they produce, and many of them don't even produce anything good. Right. All right, let's see. Gervais said some funny things, but I think completely inappropriate for the setting. All right, let's see. What else do we have? Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. We got this. And then if you've got any more Super Chat questions, happy to take them. No, that's wrong. All right. We are going to take about the wackiness of California. The wackiness of California. So it's the beginning of a new year, a new budget in California, new legislation kicks in, and you get a sense of how insane people are. Now, I don't live in California anymore, so it's even more insane from a distance. It's not an accident that California is seeing a huge exodus of people. Interesting. I mean, so many people think everything's about money, but the fact is wealthy people are not leaving California. Wealthy people are not. It's poor and middle class people are leaving California. Not if you're very, very poor. If you're very, very poor, you just become homeless. I'll talk about that in a minute. But if you're poor, or if you're middle class, you can't afford to live in California. They're just driving you out. If you want to start a small business, you can't afford to live in California. They're driving you out. Massive exodus from California. Now, I see one of my listeners has won a multi-million lotto prize. Cool. Well, some of the money you should invest in the Yaron Brook Show and become a supporter. That'd be good. Wow. I mean, I've never met anybody who's actually won the lottery. So what has California done? A few things. Well, one, it passed a law last year that kicked in basically January 1, that basically outlaws or makes it very, very difficult to hire contractors. So basically this law is supposed to force Uber, Lyft, and the dozens and dozens of companies that have arisen that are similar, delivery services, that basically use individuals as subcontractors. It's trying to force them to view them as employees, give them benefits, give them salaries, give them 401ks, treat them as full-time employees. Now, that, of course, would destroy Uber and Lyft and all these entities. Indeed, a judge today, I think in California, ruled that it didn't apply to truckers. A lot of truckers are independent contractors because everybody knows that this would destroy the industries. It would raise prices dramatically. Now, a lot of the companies, I hear, are ignoring the law and paying the fines associated with it. And they are, in the meantime, lobbying to pass a referendum in November that would basically reverse the law. And in the meantime, they're just paying fines to the state of California. But this is the insanity. Here are companies that have innovated in dramatic, amazing ways, used technology to allow millions of individuals to earn money off of the car that they have. And California wants to make that impossible. California wants to intervene in that relationship and force Uber to treat them as employees, when that would destroy, again, the business model, raise costs, and destroy our ability to enjoy the fruits of these companies. So Uber today released new guidelines for their drivers that are trying to make it clear even more that they are independent contractors. So for example, if you get turned down for a ride now, it's probably because the Uber drivers are going to have more control over who they take on a ride and who they don't, which rides they accept and which rides they don't. Because Uber's trying to make the argument, no, they're really independent contractors, so to do that, they're giving them more and more and more and more control. And Uber as a company is going to be more and more and more hands off. Who's going to suffer? My guess? We are, the customers, the consumers. But the state of California is going to go after Uber. They're going to go after Lyft. They're going to go after these countries. They are. They have a law. It's called, what's it called? It's called something 50. AB5. It's called AB5. So that's number one I was reading. Now, second, California has just announced that they're going to launch their own brand of generic label of generic prescription drugs. So because drug prices are so high, the state of California plans to create their own drug company and then subcontract the creation of generic drugs to other companies and then sell it under the brand name of the California. Now we're getting into real socialism. The government owning the means of production. The government actually producing and selling directly to consumers. Now imagine how destructive this is going to be to the drug industry, to drug prices, to legitimate drug companies, when they're competing with the government. State government, doesn't matter, but it's with the government. And California is a massive market. And imagine, I don't think I have to spell it out for you guys, what long-term consequences that has. Massive long-term consequences to the health of Americans. Already, California has taken over Medicaid in the states, and the state is negotiating with drug companies for drug prices on Medicaid. Again, just like Europe, a destroyer of the profit motive, a destroyer of the ability of companies to invest, to do R&D, to provide us with new drugs. And this is in California, the capital of biotech, where you think they should know better. But it is a haven now for socialists. And this is the thing about California and socialists. California is really, really rich. California has become really, really, really successful. In spite of all the stupidity and evilness of California politicians and the California government, California remains rich. It throws out huge amounts of tax dollars to Sacramento. They can do unbelievable amounts of stupid things, and the producers continue to produce. Silicon Valley continues to work. Hollywood continues to work. Those are the two big industries in California. And as long as the producers continue to produce, and again, it's not the producers leaving California. As long as the producers can continue to produce, as long as the producers do not rebel, as long as the producers do not shrug, California can continue for a long time to do nutty, insane things. Now, one day, they'll go bankrupt, but that could be decades from now. And imagine the innovation. Imagine the wealth creation. Imagine the progress we would achieve if the state of California backed off the most productive people in the world. Because California is one of the most productive places in the world. Silicon Valley hosts some of the great geniuses of our generation in the world today. And they are being hammered by regulations, by controls, by taxes, by stupidity, instead of being set free to make us all richer in life. It's truly a tragedy. One more thing California is doing is the governor of California is recommending $1.4 billion to help solve the homeless crisis in California. And Los Angeles is contemplating a $3 billion project to build a whole mini city for homeless people with, shelter from the rain. It rains a lot in Southern California. And air conditioning and homes and shops and a whole little town. Now, I guess it's only me who sees the problem in these things. With homelessness, this is how it works. The more money you throw at the problem, the more homeless people there will be. Incentives matter. If people are on the threshold of homelessness, but they know that if they become homeless, they'll get all this stuff. They're already dirt poor. But they can get even more if they're homeless, maybe even a free house. Then they're going to become homeless. If homeless people in Chicago hear that California is going to spend $1.4 billion on homelessness in California, guess where the homeless in Chicago are going? They're going to California. Plus, the weather's much better. It's just unbelievable that they don't get it. The more money you spend, the more homeless there will be. The solution to the homeless problem, you've got a mental health problem, which is a major problem. But most of the problem of homelessness is twofold. One, the high cost of living, the high cost of housing, which is completely dependent on government. It could be solved easily by freeing up housing, by freeing up developers to build houses everywhere. And second, by stop funding it, by making homelessness even more painful than it is. That's not nice to say, but it's a reality. That the more comfortable you make it, the more money you throw at it, is the more homeless people there will be. The worse it'll get. If you build it, they will come. Absolutely. If you build homes for the homeless, there'll be more homeless because they'll want more homes. What you need is to build homes cheaply so that people don't become homeless to begin with. And what you need is to change the code to make building homes cheaper. If California became inhospitable to homeless people, they would leave. So you're enabling the problem and you're making it thus worse. Now, all of this is driven by altruism. I'll focus on homelessness. We have to throw more money at it. Nobody will criticize the government for it. Everybody thinks they need to solve the homeless problem. The homeless problem is the problem of the people who are homeless, and it's a problem of the people whose property rights they violate. And the only way to solve the problem of the homeless is to stop letting them violate property rights. But that cannot be done because of altruism, because we care more about the homeless person because they're needy and they're suffering than we do about the property owner. And it's what prevents us from going to war with Iran. Because who are we to assert ourselves? And Iran, they're poor and they're struggling, and we shouldn't assert ourselves. That would be too self-interested. That's altruism. Altruism, which cripples our ability to be self-interested. Now, I don't think Trump is altruistic. Trump's just a pragmatist. But his people around him, his advisors, certainly the Democrats and everybody else, and the Republicans, and everybody is an altruist. That is the standard of morality. There is nothing else. They can conceive of an alternative. And that's what guides everything. All right, so California is batshit crazy. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, I could go on and on with this stupidity of Sacramento and all this stuff. You see, they have the House, the Senate, and the governor, and they have a supermajority in the Senate. So the Democrats can actually pass anything they want. And this governor is about as leftist as it goes. So they're going to pass everything leftist they can. So you're going to see a real experiment in California. Well, I mean, Mark asked, where do the homeless go? Wherever they go, they'll be violating it. Well, there's plenty of spaces. They should go squat on public land. That's what poor people do in other countries. The favelas in Brazil are basically little towns of squatters on public land. Public land is not owned by anybody. Go squat on public land. But then don't expect the government to give you services. You've got to take care of yourself. But there's no way, and I don't count here public land as streets and pavements. Right? Streets and pavements are public property in a sense, but they're really there for the businesses that are on the street, the homes that are on the street. It's there for them. They are theirs in a sense. I wish it was private property and they were sold to them. No, I'm talking about wide expanses of. There's plenty of desert in California. There's plenty of places in the mountains. There's plenty of places out there. Let them go there. Let them squat on public land, and let them build little homes there. And I'd even give them private property rights over that land ultimately. But private ownership of the homes, private ownership of businesses, the land in front of that, the accessibility of the business, accessibility to your home, that is clearly a violation of private property. All right. Somebody asked a Ricky question. Ricky Gervais, a known Corbynite supporter, attacked Hollywood elites on the basis of the association with corporations like Apple Sweatshops. Pathetic. Yes, it was pathetic. New York and California are secretly having a Who's the Stupidest contest. Wow, this predicted my topic. Is New York State bail reform going to return New York to 1970s level of crime? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think so because there's something else going on with crime. Crime is down, not because of anything particular the states or the law enforcement or the cities are doing. Crime is down, I think, for other reasons that are hard exactly to tell. So I don't think we're going to see 70s level of crime. But yeah, the bail reform in New York City is again, stupidity of treating criminals with kid gloves. That never turns out well. Even if it doesn't return it to the 1970s level, it certainly could increase crime. To any level of increased crime is a bad thing. Are there any yeah, we had this question already. All right. Started reading the Fountainhead. This is a good question. Difficult one. Thank you, Ross. Started reading the Fountainhead. I apologize for the banality of this question. It's not banal. It's a complicated question. Why is the sexual relationship between Rourke and Dominique expressed this way? It seems a little peculiar. Thank you. Well, I don't know, I'm not sure which scene you're talking about, because you could argue that all the sex scenes in the Fountainhead are peculiar in a modern sense. The two things that Ayn Rand, I think, is trying to dramatize in the sex scenes. Both a view of masculinity and femininity, which is very non-PC, and which many objectivists, I think, disagree with. It's more, her view of masculinity and femininity is more a statement in psychology than it is in philosophy. And in this case, the particular nature of the Rourke, of the Howard Rourke and Dominique relationship. So the so-called rape scene, which is not rape, but the so-called rape scene, is there to really dramatize the fact that Dominique is in a sense she's got this massive conflict inside of her of valuing and wanting to destroy the values she values, right? She's a very complex and difficult character. And not wanting to get too close, in a sense, not wanting to be intimate with her values because she believes they will be destroyed. She destroys them before she can get too intimate with them, because she feels like if other people destroy them, it will be worse for her. So here's this man who she clearly is attracted to, who she clearly wants to have sex with. He is the value. And she wants to play it both ways. She wants both to flirt with him, express her attraction with him, but not go all the way. And Rourke won't let her get away with that in anything. He won't let her get away with it with regard to sex, so he has sex with her. He gives her what she wants. And in the context of the novel, there's no doubt it's what she wants. He won't let her get away with it with regard to his architecture. She wants him to stop building, and he says no. He won't let her get away with it in regard to a relationship with him. He says, you will be my woman, but you will be my woman. You will be with me as a woman, but only on my terms. Once you accept me as a value and stop wanting me to stop valuing, once you stop wanting to destroy me. And she, because she's trying to destroy him and trying to destroy her own attraction to him and trying to destroy everything about their relationship, she then goes, has sex, and actually marries a number of other men who are ultimately Howard Rourke's enemies. So it's a very, very complex juxtaposition of a valuer, a woman who loves him but can't embrace that love because of her attitude towards her values, and how she has to learn. And since you just started reading The Fountainhead, there's still a lot more for you to read, so I'm not going to give it away. But first of all, it's literature, it's not philosophy. It's a story, it's a drama. Now, it also reflects her attitude towards femininity and masculinity. Ayn Rand was very much about femininity and masculinity. The masculine is, in the context of sex, the active, the penetrator. The female is, in a sense, more passive, the one that is penetrated, and the one that is looking up to the male. Not in the sense of, hypergamy or whatever, because she has to be the equal of the male. Dominique has to be as strong and as able, and at the end of the day, as much of a valuer as Rourke. He is waiting for her to achieve that, for him to fully embrace her. Dagny in Atlas Shrugged has to be John Galt's equal in many senses, but at the level of sex, at the level of attraction, at a level of femininity and masculinity at that level, Dagny has to look up to gold. That's Ayn Rand's theory. Now, agree with it, disagree with it, that's a theory. And that's what she's reflecting in her novels. I mean, Penny writes, the way their sexual relationship was written in The Fountainhead was brilliant for the characters involved. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you think about who Rourke is, he doesn't let you compromise. He doesn't let you, he refuses to compromise or to let you compromise. Think of his relationship with his friends, with the sculptor. You're only in the beginning of the book. He won't let you, he won't sanction your compromise, playing games, not acknowledging reality and the truth. And in a sense, that sex scene in The Fountainhead is him telling her, you want this. You wanted this. You desire this. Stop lying to yourself. Stop pretending. Stop playing games. This is reality. And that's his character. That's who he is. That's his function. That's his function in the novel. Somebody said it was rape by engraved invitation. But, again, Ayn Rand has a very complex view of femininity and masculinity. She doesn't believe men and women are the same. She doesn't believe femininity and masculinity don't exist. She doesn't believe there is no... She believes that there are real differences, and they manifest themselves in reality. And they are reflected in behavior, particularly vis-a-vis one another, and in particular with regard to sex. Now again, this isn't the same as the attitude of all these hegemony or men going their own way or this maleness thing or whatever towards women, which was looking down at them. Ayn Rand's men never look down at women. Ayn Rand's men don't think of themselves as superior, as better. Ayn Rand's men are looking for a woman, and it's hard to find if you're a giant, who is their equal in some meaningful, in a moral sense. In a moral sense. Dagny is no less productive than Gold. She's no less rational than Gold. She's no less just than Gold. She has no less self-esteem than Gold. She's mistaken. She commits errors. But from a moral perspective, she is Gold's equal. And that's what he's looking for. He's not looking to look down. And she's not looking to look up in that perspective. They're both looking for their equals. Yeah, there's a massive spoiler alert. I apologize, but all right. Let's see. I'm enjoying Mises at your recommendation. Are there any benefits to reading collectivist literature? Well, that's not Communist Manifesto, Mein Kampf, scriptures. That's not literature. That's nonfiction. Literature is different. There's lots of benefits to reading collectivist literature, like Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, or Dostoevsky. I don't know if you would categorize as collectivist. Is benefit of reading great literature which happens to have collectivistic themes. Communist Manifesto, Mein Kampf, there's only value in reading if you're curious about what they have to say, if you're curious about why so many people are motivated with them, or if you're an intellectual who has to stand up to them, has to challenge them. I've never read Mein Kampf. I don't need to. I don't care about it. I've read some Marx. I haven't read everything by Marx, and I don't think I need to. So you have to be selective because your time is valuable. No one needs so much time on the day. But there has to be a purpose for fiction. The purpose is the enjoyment of the book in and of itself. In nonfiction, there has to be a purpose for reading them. Why am I trying to learn this? Why is this important to me? So you have to think, is reading Mein Kampf important to you? In what sense? What's the context? Are noise audiences violations or protections? They're protections if they're done rationally. This noise is certainly something that can violate my property rights. Being very, very noisy next door. It's difficult to write. It's difficult to be objective about noise ordinances, but it's necessary to do. These are the kind of things government should do, and it needs expertise, and it needs thoughtfulness to write proper noise ordinances. Sound waves are a way of violating your space, particularly at night when people sleep, and there's certain acceptable hours, there's certain acceptable things one could do during certain acceptable hours. All of that needs to be thought through and put into legislation, which is not easy. How does Rand's theory of femininity and masculinity work in a gay-lesbian relationship? I don't know. You're way over my pay grade at this point. I don't know. You'd have to ask somebody who's gay or lesbian. I mean, I assume that one partner is more masculine than the other in some aspect. But I just don't know. I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not gay, and I'm not. I've never talked about this really, and I don't know. I don't know that the people I know who are gay accept Ayn Rand's view of femininity and masculinity. So I don't know. You'd have to talk to a psychologist, somebody who's discussed and thought about this, because it's. I think it's complicated. I think it's very complicated. It's one of the things that makes being gay complicated, psychologically, and it's not easy to be gay, right? Because I think there's a psychological challenge, but I don't know what the answer to that is, and plus, I'm no expert to say that Ayn Rand's view of femininity and masculinity is right. I mean, I think it's right, based on my experience. It's right, based on my knowledge. It's right, but at least to some extent. But I can't prove it, and I'm not a psychologist, and this is why I find objectivists fighting about this stuff and getting all excited and getting all emotional about this. Most of them don't know what they're talking about, and most of them don't have the psychological knowledge. You need a science of psychology. A science of psychology. And again, a science of psychology has to be a science of cognition. It has to be a science of free will. A science of it has to accept free will as its basis. A science of psychology has to help us understand these things. And so we don't have such a science yet. Not really a thorough one, not a thought-out one. I think there's steps being taken in that direction. Then we don't know. We just don't know. A lot of this stuff, the best answer to give is, I don't know. Okay, thanks everybody. Good show, I hope, for you. It was good for me. I'll be back on Saturday. There's a number of shows that I'm kind of need to do. There's one I mentioned earlier that I've already forgotten that I said I would do. Oh yeah, about the suicides and all that. I asked 2 different questions about known people. I didn't see the second one. You should have just listed them both. Let's see if I can find the second question. I'm looking back through the super chat. Okay. Are there any well-known people who understand objectivism properly and fight against it? Fight against it? Are there any well-known people who understand objectivism properly and fight against it? Well-known people. No, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's even close, unfortunately. I mean, it would be nice if they had some understanding of objectivism and disagreed. But I don't know any well-known people who have that, who so if you look at, I don't know, the people who critique objectivism in public, none of them seem to know objectivism or know it reasonably well. So maybe there are people out there who are not very well known, but not of the well-known people. Okay, why do you argue people evade objectivism? Because it's hard. Knowing the truth is exciting and invigorating. Evading is not necessary, is not thinking, and being miserable is hard, and so on. You're, Jason, absolutely right. But, okay, easy and hard in this sense. Hard is exerting focused energy. Easy is drifting and suffering in quiet. So I think, and this relates to why I think people are committing suicide and why I think there's so much drugs and why I think the culture sucks so much. People are comfortable accepting, giving into the idea of not exerting effort and just drifting and not focusing and not standing up to authorities, not standing up to their friends, not standing up to their family, not willing to be alone. So what I mean by hard is effort, courage, independence. Those are hard. They were, in a sense that they require effort. People abandon their independence. When they get to a certain age, they need to get married and they have kids. They can't find a wife that agrees with them. So, okay, so I'll compromise. And every Christmas they fight with their parents. I need to stop fighting with their parents. My parents are nice. Let me get along with them. So I need to abandon these ideas. And I just need to fit in. If I just fit in, everything will be fine. That's the attitude. And that's easy in a sense. It's torture. It's soul destructive. It's character destroying. It's horrific life. I mean, Ayn Rand once said, how can you be so, I think, brave? And she said, I'm too much of a coward to be a coward, in a sense, right? In a sense that the consequences of not sticking to my morality are far worse than anything that could happen if I stick to it. That is true, Jason. So I'm using easy and hard in the sense of effort or lack of effort. People are not willing to put in the effort. They don't have the balls. They don't have the courage. It takes courage. It takes integrity. It takes independence. And those are virtues they don't live by. If I call the police on kids smoking weeds in the park, am I immoral? Yeah, I mean kids. What do you mean by kids? They're 12? Then probably not. But are they 18? Then yeah, why are you doing it? Kids, the 18-year-old smoking weed in the park is not obstructing you in any way. So here's the thing. To be an objectivist, you have to have the virtue of independence. You have to have the virtue of integrity. And those both virtues, a sub-virtue of both of those is courage. You have to have the virtue of courage. And unfortunately, most people don't. I mean, Mark puts up a easy question for me to ask. A good topic would be whether the content somebody puts up on social media or YouTube is their own property, and as such should have their property rights protected. That completely depends on the terms of use that you signed when you got on the platform. If it says that the content is not yours, that they can change it, they can move it, then it's not yours. If they, it's like when I write a book and I hire a publisher, and the publisher takes I own some of the property right, and they own some of the property right. We've divided the property rights based on the contract that we have among us. We have different rights regarding to different stream of revenue and different uses of the book, and who can determine who the cover art and who determines what the name of the book is, and all of that is contractual. And that's the same as social media. It's completely and utterly contractual. And if the service says you can put up your content, but here are the conditions, then you have to abide by those conditions. And if one of the conditions is we have the right to take off your property and erase it and delete it if we don't like it, then they have a right to do it. Don't use their stuff if you don't sign the contract if you don't want it. What would an objectivist news organization look like? What's the closest we have currently? I don't think we have anything currently close. I mean, the closest, unfortunately, sadly, is still the mainstream media because it's the only media news organization we have. We don't have an alternative to the New York Times. I wish we did, but we don't. So it would be the New York Times with objectivity. That is, it would hire reporters. It would have foreign reporters. It would have foreign officers. It would pay people to find the news, to investigate, to do investigative reporting. And it would teach them to be objective, to present the news as is, not as opinion. It would be non-political in that sense. That it would be on the principle of speaking truth to power. It would particularly spend most of its time, proper journalism, in looking for the faults of government, in looking for corruption, in looking for ways in which government is violating its responsibilities and its duties. That is a major responsibility of a proper news organization. So it would be structured like a New York Times or a CNN or a Fox, but its principle would be objectivity, and it would be wide-ranging, and it would be primarily focused on the government and what they're doing and why they're doing it. And another role in a free society is calling businesses on because businesses can be corrupt and often are corrupt, and the media job is to find the crooks. It's to do the kind of reporting that sometimes I guess 60 Minutes does, or others do, where they go to I don't know, an oil change place, and the place says you need an oil change when you don't really, or they say they changed the oil and they haven't really. Things like that. But that's what it would look like. We don't have anything like that today. The closest are the conventional news sources, and they're terrible. Yaron, write a children's book. I can't. I don't have the ability to write stories. You said classical music was better than modern music. What's your opinion of music that draws on classical elements, i.e. symphonic progressive rock? I mean, I like symphonic progressive rock. I think it's better than other contemporary music. I'm a fan of Pink Floyd, I like Renaissance, those of you who know who they are. But it's still not the same. It's better, but it's still not the same. It doesn't have the scope, the emotional intensity, the depth and the complexity that good classical music has. Smell audiences from weed or food processing. I certainly think certain smell audiences would make sense. Again, hard to be objective about it. Not clear that weed would qualify. But yeah, certain smells are so horrific and so physically upsetting that there should be audiences against it. All right, we're done. I bet Yaron likes Taylor Swift music. I like lots of music at the superficial level. So I like most popular music at some level. I don't love Taylor Swift. I don't love any popular music, but most of it is repetitive and boring and uninteresting. And maybe the first time you hear it, it's pretty cool, but then second, third, fourth time, it's boring. I can listen to Beethoven over and over and over again, and it's always interesting. Right? You can't do that with Taylor Swift or country music. I can listen to country music, I can listen to jazz, I can listen to popular, I can listen to most things, but the only thing I don't listen to really is rap, because I find it annoying. And I don't listen to heavy metal. I find heavy metal annoying. I find there's certain things in music that I just find overly annoying, and I can't. But I have listened to a very, very, very wide range of music. You got to find things that you find is pretty and enjoyable in life. And not everything has to be deep and sophisticated and meaningful and really, really meaningful. You can, different moods, like driving. I don't listen to classical music when I'm driving. I don't think it's appropriate. I listen to, 70s rock, maybe that progressive rock. Okay. Like the video. Like. Like is cheap. It's easy for you to do. It doesn't take anything but a click of the mouse. Share it, please. That's the most important thing you can do to spread the show, to increase its exposure. And contribute. YaronBrookShow.com/support. Support the show. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the support. I appreciate all those people who do the super chat. It is truly, it's truly fun, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to put some dollars behind it. Those of you as students who don't have the money, $1.99. Some of you people put $1.99. Anybody can do $1.99 every couple of weeks to ask a question. And of course, those of you who support me with larger amounts of money, thank you for appreciating what I do and making what I do possible. I will talk to you all on Saturday. Bye, everybody.